I am sure you have seen those motivational edits on social media from people like David Goggins or Alex Hormozy saying that sleep isn't important and that you need to grind and you need to do things tired and you don't need a full 8 hours of sleep. You don't need a whole lot of sleep to get things done. They say that young people have an infinite amount of energy and that they can get things done with only like 6. I spat everywhere. Oh my gosh. With only like 6 or 5 hours of sleep. Some people even say like 40 hours of sleep. I used to believe in that lie. I used to believe that sleep wasn't important and that it was something that we could toss aside and that it was just a waste of time. I would look at it as a literal waste of time. It's like I'm not doing anything when I'm sleeping. There's not much benefits that come with sleep. So why do I try to spend a third of my day sleeping? That doesn't make any sense. That was my mindset until I saw those motivational videos. And so I started to do that. I started to get even less amount of sleep. I used to get like 6 hours of sleep. Then I would get down to about like 4 hours of sleep every single night. That is literally one of the biggest mistakes I have made in my life. I started to actually feel the consequences of not getting good sleep. So after I started to feel all of the negative consequences of lack of sleep, I started to do research on it. And I found that sleep is probably the most important thing in our lives. And it is one of the biggest aspects of our lives that we abuse. So, oh yeah. Hell yeah. It's getting bigger little by little. Oh. So just a heads up before I start to go into detail about why sleep is really important and why lack of sleep is really, really bad for you. Most of what I'm about to say doesn't come from me. It comes from someone named Dr. Matthew Walker. He is a sleep connoisseur. He knows a lot about sleep. Like his whole life is dedicated to sleep. And this comes partially from his book, from podcasts that I've seen. This doesn't come from me necessarily. I can only speak about what I experienced, but he has actual sources and actual data proving my point, which is that bad sleep is really, really bad for you. He says that anywhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep is the sweet spot. Ideally, that you should try to get 9 hours of sleep. But if you happen to get 7 hours of sleep, that's not the worst thing either. So just a heads up so that you know, 7 to 9 hours of sleep is the sweet spot to a good night's sleep. But he said that in 1942, the average amount of sleep that the average American got was 8 hours of sleep, which is right in the middle between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. That is good job, people in 1942, right? Most of them are dead. He says now the average American gets about 6.5 hours of sleep. 6.5. That is not between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. 6.5. That is, we lost an hour and a half of sleep since 1942. That is incredibly bad. But why is it so bad, you might ask, bitch? So I can say generic stuff. You know, I felt more sluggish, that my energy wasn't there, my focus and attention span wasn't the best. You know, I can say stuff like that, which doesn't mean it's not true, that that's not a big deal, because it is. But when I heard what I'm about to tell you, this changed like everything for me. Especially if you are a young man who wants to be the best version of himself. If you are watching this video, then you need to hear this. Dr. Walker says that for people who sleep between 5 and 6 hours every single night, they have a testosterone level of someone that is 10 years older than them. Oh my gosh, when you hear this, that is incredible. Lack of sleep ages you by a decade in terms of your overall wellness, in terms of your fertility and your muscle strength, your sexual performance, if you want to get into it. You are literally aging yourself by a decade, by a whole decade. That's crazy. That is like the biggest self-sabotage that you could do to yourself. You are killing yourself. I mean, it's just crazy when I heard that, and it still gets me all rattled up, if you couldn't tell. To sum it all up, The shorter your sleep, the shorter your life. That is a harsh reality, but it is very true. Sleep is one of the biggest things that we neglect on purpose. Like I said, we are literally killing ourselves when we get a lack of sleep. And Dr. Matthew Walker believes with his whole heart, lack of sleep is the main cause of pretty much everything bad that happens to humans. That we have shorter lifespans now because of our lack of sleep. That our chances of getting a heart attack have increased tremendously because of the lack of sleep. Just everything dealing with our lives, mentally or physically, a lot of it comes down to a lack of sleep. Which, like I said, it might very well be possible because our lifespans were longer back in 1942 when we got 8 hours of sleep and heart attacks weren't as big and everything. But now that we get a lack of sleep by an hour and a half, all of these things have gone up tremendously. And he thinks it all boils down to a lack of sleep, which I believe as well. But the funny thing is that literally nobody talks about this. Literally no one. It is slept on.
But everybody has a lack of sleep. It's just a part of life. Like, I have to wake up early to go to the job that I hate, to pay the bills, just to survive and not live. I just have to stay alive that way. And then I also worked another hard 40 hours this week at my job that I hate. So I deserve to go out this weekend and go to the bar and get drunk and stay up until like 4 a.m.
Bro, shut up. You say it's just a part of life, which I used to believe as well, and that everybody does it. But if you have looked around yourself, you notice that everybody else is fat and anxious and depressed. And why would you want to be that way?
Oh, well, for other people that might be true, but I'm an exception, you see, because I can live my life normally and I can function just very properly when I only get about 6 hours of sleep. I'm just built different.
You might think that you are built different, because I used to say that as well. I thought I could get off of 6 hours of sleep or 5 hours of sleep. What you don't realize, though, is that you have what you would call micro sleeps in the day when you are underslept. Micro sleeps are when you literally fall asleep for like a second or two, or maybe even a couple of seconds. But the thing is that you are so tired that you don't even realize that you are having micro sleeps.
Oh, but I'm not.
Yes, you are. I just told you that you are. Dr. Matthew Walker's research shows that people do have a lot of micro sleeps when they are not getting enough sleep. Nobody is built different. Nobody can survive off of 6 hours of sleep. And I know this because Dr. Matthew Walker, he shows a statistic with people who only get 6 hours of sleep. And it is honestly incredible. I don't have it memorized, so I'm gonna have to read it. So that's why I'll be looking down. He says that the number of people who can survive on 6 hours of sleep without showing any impairment, so without them like having micro sleeps, or their focus and attention span doesn't decrease, or their testosterone levels stay the same. The number of people who can survive on 6 hours of sleep without showing any impairment, rounded to a whole number, and expressed as a percent of the population, is 0. So not even 1% of the world's population, the whole 8 billion people in this world, not even 1% can survive without any impairment when they have a lack of sleep. When you have a lack of sleep, everybody has impairments, including you, even if you don't think so. So that's all the statistics of when you have lack of sleep. But personally speaking, when I started to improve my sleep, I quickly noticed my memory improving. I noticed that my testosterone levels were better, if you know what I mean. I noticed my focus and attention span increased. I noticed more muscles in my body. I noticed me being stronger. Even if I didn't work out, I would still maintain my physique. When I had a lack of sleep, I would see myself having a really bad physique. When I got more sleep, my energy got up, and I was just more happier too. That's another thing that people don't talk about. When you have a lack of sleep, you are more susceptible to fall into depression and overthinking and anxiety. When you have a good amount of sleep, all of that gets taken away. There's so much to talk about with sleep, but I could talk about like REM sleep and deep sleep and all of the stuff that happens to your mind and everything when you sleep. When you sleep, things don't shut off. Things are in your body. They are improving. They are recovering when you are sleeping. But that's a whole nother video that I could talk about. But I just wanted to show what Dr. Matthew Walker, his research says, because like I said, it changed my life and the way that I look at sleep, and I'm hoping that this video changes yours. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to like and subscribe and do all that shit. My name is Matthew, and I will see you next time.